We are hanging out with Dan Gomer. Dan, what is up?
Not much. Just hanging out with you guys.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
This is exciting. This is our first Headed Home podcast episode of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yeah. How was your holiday?
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of took it easy and no traveling, no trips. So now we're just kind of, I'm ready for everybody to get back to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's time.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
I feel like this week is interesting because it's like half in, half out. Like you're like, when we were at my son's game last night, it was like you're like sort of back into the swing of things, but like sort of not. And it just feels weird and everyone's still confused about like who they are and what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you guys get overwhelmed at all? Because like I'll set these goals and I'll have ambitions, and at the beginning of the year I always have this feeling of like I have all of this stuff that I want to do, and then there's like this lurking underneath feeling of actually my capabilities.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, I got to take it slow. I got to be patient. It's not going to be perfect. Yeah. But I deal with that a lot this time of year.
Well, I mean, that's exactly where I was this morning. I just sent a video over to Diane this morning about that. You know, it was just, like there's like an undercurrent of like, I don't know, like something was just off. And for me, I started focusing on like, okay, great. So why am I doing the things that I'm doing this year? Mm-hmm. And when I started thinking about that and I started thinking long term, you know, what it means for me 5 years down the line if I do the work this year. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like, oh, right. That's why I'm doing this, you know? And for me, that was very calming. It kind of it centered me, right? It brought me back down to earth where it was just like, all right, cool. Like, you know, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to do these things because it's important to me. And these are the reasons why. And, you know, I'm a huge proponent of why. If we know why we're doing what we're doing, then the motivation just naturally comes. And so I kind of lost touch with that for a little bit and then decided to reconnect with it. And that really helped.
Do you know what I do the first couple weeks of the year that have like really helped me? Because I try not to just like jump into like action right away, because then I feel it almost is like stressful because I feel like I'm not being thoughtful and intentional about planning out what I'm doing. So I try to, like when we went on our trip, we come up with like very specific, like we go through every routine that we have. We go through everything that we're doing down to like what we're eating for lunch. It's like sort of embarrassing now that I'm saying it out loud, but like,
no, that's good.
But I mean, just like what is not working, what is working, like what do we need to change? And then it's not necessarily implementing right away, but it's like scheduling to implement. So like, you probably notice you'll see stuff on your calendar, but surprise.
I just declined.
He does that to me.
Right.
Yeah, like no, thank you.
No explanation.
No thanks. I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah, no, thank you. But like scheduling time to figure out the thing that you need to do instead of like doing it that first week. That's helps me.
Well, that's so important. And like Dan said, like knowing your why and also being able to have that conversation with yourself when you face resistance, and is something that I'm really trying to work on is, okay, I'm feeling this way for a reason. And that resistance might come from prospecting or come about when I need to be prospecting or when I need to be working out or eating the right way, because you have these goals. But also, like you said, if you don't have a why behind them, and also if you're not conscious of those feelings that you have when you come up and actually addressing them and like processing them, I think it's really hard to stick on those goals and overcome resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Good old resistance.
So before we, and this is one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on, Dan. We saw you speak at your Back to Basics event a couple months ago, and a lot of the things that you were talking about resonated with us, and I think would resonate with a lot of professionals in our industry and in any sales industry and just in life in general. I want to get into that, but first I want to know a little bit more about you, your background. How did you get into real estate? How did you get to where you're at today?
Yeah. So I was born on April 15th.
Start from the
I
beginning.
felt like I knew you were going to say that.
It was just it was a layup. Yeah. So, you know, ever since I was like in middle school, I wanted to be a teacher. I don't know what it was, but that was just kind of my calling. And so my career path really started in middle school. And I went to college to become a teacher, got a degree in science, became a middle school science teacher, high school basketball coach, and fairly quickly realized that being in public education was not my jam. You know, I still loved the art of teaching, but the job was not a good fit for me. And so I started looking for other things to do, and eventually landed on real estate and was doing fix and flips for 3 or 4 years. And I call that my second college degree because it was very expensive and I learned a lot. And I eventually transitioned into traditional real estate, or whatever you want to call it, and helping other people buy and sell. And, you know, kind of the same thing. It was a very slow process. It was very challenging, difficult. My third college education, you know, in those next couple of years, just trying to learn how to build a business. And, you know, eventually I got to a point where, you know, I was very dejected. I was depressed. Things were not moving as quickly as I wanted. And, you know, at a certain point, I finally just got to a crossroads where it was like, okay, you know, what are you going to do about this? You know, my headspace was not good.
How far in were you when that happened?
So I had been flipping for 3-4 years, something like that. And then I was probably about 1.5 years into kind of rebuilding my new business. I didn't realize I was going to be starting from ground zero, right? You know, I was like, you know, people know I'm in real estate. I have experience. This is going to be pretty easy. And that just wasn't the case. I had to retrain, so to speak, everybody that I knew that I can actually help them buy and sell real estate. So it was a slow process. But once I kind of made that decision that, well, we were just talking about this, the why. Like once I understood why I needed to be successful in real estate, and in that time in my life, success to me meant make money. Once I realized that I needed to make money, I needed to be successful in that way so that I could prove to myself that I was valuable, that I could actually do something, that I actually had a skill set. Once I realized that that's what I had to do, that's when things started to click. So once again, we go back to motivation. There was no stopping me at that point. There was no talking me down. There was no getting in my way. It was like, I'm going to do this come hell or high water.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. And once I did that, I saw the success that was so valuable to me. That doesn't always mean that my life was successful. You know, I mean, there was a lot of challenges and struggles that came along with that. You know, I remember after having my most successful year ever, I had a really good year. And I remember talking to my wife, you know, at the end of the day, the kids are in bed and I'm just sitting there saying, like, this is not the life that I want for myself. This sucks. And she's like, what are you talking about? You had this amazing year, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all I do is work. I'm not present. I don't have energy. All I do is work. It's not worth it. But, you know, would I trade everything that I put into building my business that way? Absolutely not. It was perfect. It was exactly what needed to happen. I needed to work my butt off to get to a point to where I broke in a new way. And then it was kind of like, okay, cool. So I know how to make money. Great. I know how to run a real estate business. Great. Now, how do I create a successful life? And what does that look like? And so then there was another big transition process over the next 2-3 years of trying to figure out, okay, so what does a successful life look like? Do I go back to teaching? Am I a speaker? Am I an author? Am I a team lead? And am I a real estate agent? What is it? And so there was another transition period trying to figure out what was really important and really valuable to me. Thankfully, I eventually landed at EXP, which creates a spectacular platform to be able to mesh all those things together. And that's when I caught my second wind or third wind or fifth wind or whatever in the heck it was to get back into teaching and education and coaching and still stay in real estate, which is a profession that I really love to do. And so now I feel like I'm really starting to hit like a stride, which is super fun and exciting. I'm really excited for the next 5 years. A lot of work to do, but I'm enjoying it. And I feel, you know, we were also talking about intention, you know, I feel intentional about where I'm going now. And I'll kind of summarize it with this, you know, the reason that I feel like I finally have intention is because I was curious. I was constantly figuring out, how do I do it better? How do I do it better? And then I was taking action towards things.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a thought experiment. It was like, well, I think if I'm really successful financially, that'll make me feel better. And then I got there and I'm like, well, a little bit, but
Helps.
it helps. Having money's better than not. Nobody's frowning on a Sea-Doo, right? So having money's great. But so now I'm asking all the questions of like, okay, great. So how can I do it even better? How can I do it even better? Let's try this. Let's implement this. See what happens. Okay, let's implement this. See what happens, you know, and then incrementally things get better.
I think you have to build in, and this is something that we're always trying to be thoughtful about, you have to build in time to reflect on how your life is going.
Right.
And I think a lot of times we get in positions where we get so far down the road and you don't have that reflection time that you need to really be thoughtful about what you're doing. Because sometimes, I mean, and you see it all the time, people are like, how did I get here? How have I been here for 15 years and I'm miserable? Or how am I, you know, in this relationship? Or how am I, you know, all of those things. And so I think, you know, I appreciate what you said about being really intentional about reflecting and then also being open to trying different stuff. And part of trying different stuff is like messing it up and knowing that like you're just going to have to like jump in and figure it out and see if it's something that you want to do or not.
Well, and have faith that if you screw it up, it doesn't matter. Like you'll be fine.
Like it really,
You'll be fine.
Totally.
Like there's just about everybody in this country, no matter how great or poor your situation is, like we have a lot of flexibility. We can screw up a lot and still be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Have food in our belly and survive. Right.
Yep.
So, you know, one thing that I will say about that space, it's one thing that I talked about in that speech in the Back to Basics about Costa Rica. But my son recently, you know, he's really into the TikTok, man. He's addicted to the freaking TikTok, right?
Oh yeah.
Drives me crazy. And so I've been kind of getting on him recently. He's 13, and I'm like, so how about you just take some space, like literally just stare at the wall for a little bit and let your mind wander. Don't be entertained. You don't need anybody telling you what to just be quiet. And he took me up on it. And the other day we were skiing and just randomly on the mountain, he's like, hey Dad, I took some space the other day. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, what'd you think about? And he's like, I was thinking about gravity and how weird gravity is. And I'm like, all right, cool.
Love
cool.
it.
You
Love
know?
it.
And then he did it again today. So like, you know, it's so important to have that space. Like what's going to come up? I don't know. Think about gravity, but maybe something else will come up that's a little more relevant to what you need. You know, I don't know.
Well, and we, you know, I think like letting your mind wander, like we don't do that, but like having the space to be like when we were on our trip in Mexico, I think the first day we were there, I was telling him like, my mind went in so many different freaking directions that day. It was like to all of these like really awful things. And then it was like things I wanted to do. And it was just so, but like, it's almost like giving your mind space to like breathe and like think through thoughts.
Well, we're so stimulated.
Yeah.
You mentioned TikTok. I mean, there's so many different social media outlets. There's so many podcasts. There's so much information to learn. And I think we can get in that habit of constantly being stimulated. I know that happened to me last year. Like when I wasn't totally dialed in with working, I'd have YouTube up and I'd be listening to a podcast clip. And then I caught myself doing it when I'm making the kids breakfast. And then all of a sudden I'm like, why am I always like just listening to something on my phone? Like that's not creating peace. That's not creating any headspace, like you mentioned. And then it starts to get blurry, and then you get busy at work, and you have a couple of obstacles come up in your life, and then it starts to get dark, and getting out of that is hard. It sounds easy. You need to do it, but I think it's hard if you can't get away from it and find that perspective.
Well, and that's why I love the word simple because it's really simple. The concept is really simple, but it is not easy. Last night I failed, because me and my wife, we didn't have any sports, And we had the opportunity to take the kids, go downstairs and either play some ping pong or just mess around or just sit and have some quiet time. And instead we turned on the TV and we sat there and we watched TV for like an hour and a half. And it's like, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
So, but then I was reflecting on that and I'm like, this year I am dedicating myself to creating more space because it's so important, and it is hard and it takes intention. But what I have found in my experience is when I force myself to do it, when I kind of come back to or whatever, I'm like, oh, so grateful that I took that time.
Yeah. Well, Anders had to cut out. I know for a while he was doing learning 8 TikTok dances a day, and so he's had to.
We'll post those in the comments.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are we gonna see some
no
of
one
those?
wants
I
to
never
see.
did that. I never did that. But I did. Funny. You did. Mention scheduling space to have some perspective and peace. That was one of my big goals this year, is systemize peace. And so on, the first of the month, I have in my calendar to schedule a 90-minute float, sensory deprivation tank. If anyone's tried that,
Love it.
It gets you away from your phone for 90 minutes. It's complete darkness. You can't hear anything. You can't see anything. You're alone with your thoughts. I used to do that more consistently when, in 2020, 2021, it helped a lot. Got away from it and can definitely tell the difference. So I'm trying once a month to do that 90 minutes and then just to do a massage a month as well, just to kind of not get to that point to where you just feel like you're so overwhelmed with everything that you're doing that you just, you're not happy.
Right. Yeah, I do bi-weekly massages, man.
Yeah.
And I always say when I leave,
I
set the
know.
next one.
It's the best. It's the best money I have. I just
so important.
I know it totally is. Well, I want to talk about Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So last summer, right? You went to Costa Rica, and I know that when you were talking at Back to Basics that there were a lot of lessons that you learned from that trip. I would love for you to talk through that.
Well, so the reason we went to Costa Rica is because I was just fried. I was just frazzled. I felt like I was running from one thing to another, and I looked at my wife and I was like, "Hey, we could just sell everything and move to Costa Rica,
Done deal.
like right now, and be retired." And she was like, I totally blindsided her. She had no idea this was coming, and she was like, "What? We haven't even been to Costa Rica. Maybe we should go visit first." So that's kind of where it was born. And so we spent 5.5 weeks down there. We did 10 days bumping around, doing the touristy thing and the resort and that kind of stuff. And then we landed in a little town called Tarcoles, which is a poor fishing community. Some of the homes don't have running water, like metal siding for the sides of their houses, really rustic community, we'll say. And a buddy bought a hotel down there, and he was in the middle of renovating it. So the hotel is half renovated, not ready for people to live in it. It was very much like camping in Costa Rica, about 150 yards from the beach, so it was this black sand beach. It's a fishing shoreline, right? So there's nobody there. There's no tourists. Nobody in that town spoke any English. So we were, in it, and had a lot of space, a lot of time to just sit and think and be quiet and unwind. It took me weeks to truly unwind, so it just speaks to how tightly wound I was. And, I would say the biggest things that I learned from that, the things that I talk about in that speech is, number one, we don't have to do anything. I had all these things on my list that I needed to do, and the reality is I was putting a lot of pressure on myself and doing a lot of things that actually weren't that necessary. Number two, simplification is key. Like, man, it's funny. I think one of the most ironic pieces about our culture and about social media is you have a constant supply of people promising to solve your solutions and make your life easier with these 9,000 tools that you should buy.
Yep.
And string them all together. And through this complicated web just shenanigans that somehow is going to make your life easier. It's the most ironic thing. It's so funny. And so what ends up happening is we overcomplicate our lives in the process, like trying to simplify our lives. We end up overcomplicating our lives. And then that just creates this like ominous pressure that's on us all the time. And so I am just on this simplicity kick. How do we keep it simple, everything? And take it down to its most basic components. So that was another thing, because out there, everything was simple. And kind of. It took me like 3 days to fill up a propane tank, but some things were maybe
other
not
than propane.
Other than propane, you know, everything was much more simple. It was like everybody got up, they did their job, they hung out with their family, they ate dinner, they went to bed. They got up, they hung out with their family, they did their job, they went to bed. I mean, it was a very simple lifestyle, and it was beautiful. And then the last thing that I learned was taking space. So for a long time, when I was growing up, I was really good at finding space, staring at the clouds, and, you know, like I got yelled at for it, honestly. And that's part of where, you know, I started telling myself a story that there was something wrong with me, because everybody else was like, let's go get to work. And I'm like, I just want to look at the clouds. And they're like, you're an idiot, you know? And so I stopped. And so much so that I had forgotten how to do that.
Yeah.
And when I went to Costa Rica, I was laying in my bed one day just listening to music, and it dawned on me. I was like, man, I haven't done this in years. And all of these ideas and things just started coming into my mind. This clarity started coming to my, like, I know what I need to do when I get back to the United States. And, you know, just everything in 30 minutes, my life shifted. And it's because I found that space. And that's when it dawned on me, like, I have to create more space in my life. If I want to live my most successful life, I have to find more space. And so that was a pretty powerful lesson as well.
So one thing that I just wanted to mention, because as you were talking, I was thinking about this. You know, in 2020, we had an experience, I mean, different from Costa Rica, but I think where we weren't around a lot of people, we were able to intentionally create, you know, space and peace and all of these things that we wanted and that we knew that we needed to be like healthy human beings mentally and physically. And it sounds like you kind of came to that realization in Costa Rica. How hard, because we struggled with this once we were like back in the real world. How hard has it been for you to implement some of those pieces when you have people pulling on you that do not have the same awareness or understanding or maybe don't look at that in the same way that you do?
Yeah, it was really hard. You know, coming back, the what's the word I'm looking for? Like par for the course, right? Like is to just jump right back in.
Yes.
Right? Like,
yes.
And I had to be really, 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 really cognizant of not doing that. And it wasn't a linear path. It was kind of like, I noticed that I'm back in old habits. Like, what do I need to adjust and make some adjustments? I noticed, you know, so it was really more of like a ping pong match, you know, like trying to make little micro adjustments. So it's been really challenging. And even today, now that I'm 6 months removed from it, I find that I'm more ingrained back into my old habits, and I really have to, like, what were the important things that I took away from Costa Rica? How do I re-implement them? It takes a lot of intention. So that's one aspect of it, you know, like taking the space. I haven't been doing that. I'm falling back into that old habit of just like, it's not that important. No, it is. And I have to be intentional about finding that space. The other thing that's been just absolutely critical is the people that I'm surrounded with, you know, Diane and Sean and, you know, some other people from the team. You know, they know how important it is for me to simplify. In fact, we just had a conversation this morning about an ad that we were putting out, and Diane had said something about, well, that just sounds like we're overcomplicating this. And I'm like, all right, great. Then let's not do it, you know. Let's fix it. Let's change it so that it's not overcomplicated. So having the right people being surrounded by the right people who understand that these are the value systems that are important to me and who, support that, that's maybe even more important, because then they're giving me reminders of like, hello.
Yeah.
Did you forget about this?
Well, it's so easy to fall back into that, like you said, like the norm, the par for the course. And I think a lot of that is also driven by, just like emotions. Like you make decisions based on, the urge to do something, and so that it is, you have to like set expectations too with the people around you. And that's great that you've found a team that gives you that, but also with clients too. I mean, has it changed the way that you've worked with your real estate clients as well?
Yeah. So one of the things that I realized when I was out there is I was doing a lot of work that I didn't necessarily need to do. So I've started partnering with people on my team on just about every deal that I do. So it's kind of like, hey, here's your role, here's my role, and then I obviously give them a split. But so that's been really helpful, just to take some things off of my plate. And in terms of how I like communicate with clients and things like that, I don't know that it's changed too much, other than I'm very particular about who I want to work with, I guess, but I've always kind of been that way. So I don't know. It hasn't really changed it too much, other than really just partnering with people on my team to take stuff off my plate.
Yeah. And what's your, now that you're at EXP, like what's your goal there? Like who are you trying to attract? I know you're a team leader. Are you looking for real estate agents to join you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the way I put it is I'm looking for leaders or learners, which is a mouthful, but
Two good
unique
words.
New York. No, but that's what I'm looking for, because, leaders who are looking to grow and expand and help other people, like I want to partner with those people, But additionally, people who are learners, it's eternally frustrating when people say, well, I need to do this and I should be doing that. And it's like, okay, but are you? No. Well, you don't have to do anything, and you're obviously not doing it. So, people who are ready to learn, people who are ready to grow, people who are like, they hit that crossroads that I was talking about earlier, where it's like, okay, whatever I'm doing isn't working and I'm fed up with it and I am going to change. I just need somebody to help me identify the quickest route to create the change that I want in my life. Man, come on, let's go. Like, I'll run through a wall for you if you're willing to do the things that you say you're going to do. Like, and going back to surrounding ourselves with the right people, that's everything. Right. If we can build a community with people who are all moving in the same direction, who all kind of have the same value system, then we all become more successful, and it's a heck of a lot more fun.
Yeah. Well, I think from a leadership standpoint, you have just a great skill set and a unique perspective. Just even from my background in sales, like usually I have a great leaders where I'm at, but I have worked at companies in the past where the leader is really just pushing production, and that's okay. I get it. But I also think that that's a high risk for burnout. It's a high risk for bad mental health and, maybe bad family life, depending on how much you put in. But I think you have that perspective where you've been through that. You've been through the burnout. How to get there, and maybe it is 2 or 3 years where you have to sacrifice a lot of things that are important to you, but also knowing like, hey, you're going to get to the point to where you're going to realize that money isn't happiness or success to everybody, and here's some other ways that you can go about your business while also having some balance and understanding and keeping in mind what's important to you.
Right.
And there's a ton of research and evidence around leadership where if you are not focused on building connections and relationships and humanizing the people that you're leading, like you're not building trust and credibility with them. And they're actually I wish I could think of the name of the research, but they're actually less productive if they don't have a personal connection and they feel like they can trust and like you as a human.
Right.
So what I love and appreciate about what you said is that, you know, you're building those like human connections with them around like their lives, and ultimately that's going to make them better at their jobs. But like you can't just walk in and demand production. Like that's actually not going to be the most successful way to get them to be successful.
Well, the way I see it is production is the byproduct of the motivation.
Yep.
Like if they're not producing, they're not motivated.
Yep.
So some people motivate with an iron fist. Like I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. It's maybe not the way that I would do it, but my belief is that if they understand why they're doing it, if they understand what the value is to them to be productive, then they're going to produce. That is the byproduct of a healthy mindset.
Very true.
I know you're an author. Talk a little bit about the books that you've written and some of the, maybe people can check those out and learn more about you. And
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I've written a couple books. One is a real estate related book, the Sphere Marketing Handbook, which started out as my team kept asking me the same questions, and I was like, I'm just going to put together a Word doc that kind of explains how I built my business from step one to whatever. And then once I got it completed, I was like, oh, like I could put this on Amazon, you know? So Sean Hermanson, who's on our team, helped me dress it up, and we put it on Amazon. And so now I've got that book. The other one that I wrote in 2020 is called I'm Full of It and So Are You. Let's Change the World Together. So the concept of that book is really, I was originally planning on calling it World Changers. But my wife told me it was too grandiose, and she told me I couldn't call it that, so I said fine. But the idea behind that is that we're all world changers all day, every day, just by being alive. The way we interact with people, the way we drive, the way we think, the way we talk to other people, all that stuff has an impact in the world. Think dragonfly effect, right? So if we're going to impact the world, whether we try to or not, why not impact the world with intention? So if we're going to be intentional about how we're impacting the world, then we have to bring more awareness to who we are, why we do the things that we do. And the more that we understand why we do the things that we do, the more that we can change our behavior moving forward in the way that then we can be more impactful in an intentional way. So that's what that book is all about. And then I wrote a chapter in an anthology book. There was like 30 authors with Les Brown and Barry Overton, who's on, one of my partners as well. And so that was really cool. But I can't say I wrote the whole book. I just wrote a chapter in that one.
That's awesome. Well, I heard you on another podcast speaking about your Sphere Marketing book, and I'd like you to share a lesson that, and I think it may even be a chapter in the book, but it's about how you connected with your Sphere through doing CMAs. And just to give a lot of real estate agents listen to this, and I know people are always looking for, good prospecting ideas, and you made it sound really easy. So talk about your CMA plan.
So back to simplicity versus easy, right? I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's simple. And I know it's not easy because nobody's doing it. So you want to set yourself apart, do this one thing. And so when I was building my business, the number one lead generation source that I had that took me from, 5 to 7 deals a year to 40 was doing CMAs for my Sphere. It's so simple. Call everybody you know, get their address, get a little bit of details about their property, do a market analysis for them. Every year, you do 3 to 5 a week. You just kind of have them on rotation, and you don't ask permission after the first year. The second year, you just do it. And here's your market analysis. It's way better than, Zillow, Zestimate, and, all that kind of stuff. Gives you an opportunity to call them and say, hey, I've got this report for you. I'd like to go over it. Give me a call back. They call you back. You're not selling them anything. You're just like, hey, I did this valuation for you. Thought you might be interested. One thing leads to another. oh, by the way, my coworker just told me the other day they're thinking about moving, or we're thinking a year from now we're going to move, or you open up that conversation about real estate in a very non-pushy way, and you're providing value, and all of these things. There's so many benefits to it. You're demonstrating your knowledge.
Yeah.
You're also learning about the local market because you're doing hundreds of CMAs every year, so you understand what's happening in the market. I could go on and on and on about the benefits of doing it, and it's absolutely shocking to me how nobody is doing it. This is one of the, like, I feel like I'm beating my head against a wall when I tell people to do this and they don't do it, and it's just like, why?
Yeah. Well, and you're, like you mentioned, like, you're offering legit value, which takes away the call reluctance. I think a lot of, and like you said, call everyone in your database. People are afraid of, like, rejection, or they don't want to be salesy. But when you have something, like, I'd love a CMA. When you have something of value to offer them, and you're just giving it to them, and then helping them understand their home value, like, it's an amazing way to connect.
Well, and you do still ask for business, right? And if you go get they can even email me if they want, and I'll send them an electronic copy of it for free, of the Sphere Marketing Handbook. But I've got scripts in there. And when I send the report over to them, I always write in the bottom, hey, by the way, if you know anybody who's thinking about buying or selling, please do a warm introduction. I would love to talk to them. And I just want you to know, this is the key piece, I want you to know that anybody you send my direction, I will take fantastic care of them. I'll make you look good, right? That's it. It's a very soft ask, but they get it. They get the point, right? That's all it takes. And you do that enough, your business is going to grow.
I love that idea.
So I have a last surprise question for you.
Okay.
What's his favorite TikTok
Babe.
dance?
One.
We've got it set up. We got it all choreographed.
As a former high school dance coach, I don't ever want to see that from you. Okay.
You don't.
Okay. So I know there's been a ton of lessons you've learned in your career. What would you say, if you could pick one that you would want to leave with your family that has been the most important lesson? What would you?
Business, life. Man, like a tombstone kind of thing, huh?
I know. I know that is sort of deep for a January.
You're right. My brain's not working.
Yeah.
No, I do think about this kind of stuff a lot. I think it would be, something along the lines of, just keep it simple and, like, be intentional with your life, or curiosity. Be curious about your life, and be willing to change and grow and open to new possibilities. It's just, I don't know how you could screw it up if you're curious about your own life, your own actions. You take responsibility for your own life and your own actions, and you just constantly try to do it just a little bit better every day, Yeah. And I think it stems from that curiosity of, like, how can I be a little better? How can I be a little bit better? Something to that effect. I don't know if you could fit all that on a tombstone, but
love that.
No, I do too, because it's also connected to awareness, like paying attention, and I think the whole, simplifying in space and curiosity helps you just maybe change your life that 1 degree or that 2 degrees. That might just be that different. Weren't we talking about that? The example of, I don't know who said it, but, like, if your sail is like 1 degree off, or an airplane, it changes the entire trajectory at the end. Sometimes you just need to, like, hey, if you're paying attention, you're curious, you're always learning, and you can always learn because you're always changing too. One lesson that you get when you're 25, you could get that same lesson when you're 40, and it could just hit completely different.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Where can people find you?
So you can find me at danshometeam.com, get more information about me there, or dangomer.com. You can always email me at danielgomer1@gmail.com. I'm on all the socials. Got a YouTube channel that we're trying to grow. So, if you like YouTube stuff, go on there. I got lots of great content, both business and mindset. So check out YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Try to be everywhere.
out there.
Well, Andrew will start watching your YouTube videos during breakfast.
I will.
Perfect.
kidding.
While he's doing his dances, his morning dances.
In between. Well, this has been great, Dan. Thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate
thank you.
it. And yeah, to all of our listeners out there, thank you for listening. Go check out Dan. Yeah, he's got some awesome information out there. And until next time,
See ya.
happy 24.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.